if you're asking if I was good at something, I'd say I was good at grilling meat. I know that's such a southern thing. Bro, I was a beast on a barbecue grill. I couldn't cook worth a shit. You give me some charcoal.
It's that pyro again.
Yeah, buddy. I was in there.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hey, I'm Tim Barnes. You are The Genre, and in each episode of this show, I ask someone about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts that they pursued, and how they feel about those first pursuits now. Why do I do this? Because I think these are the three questions that kind of guide you towards what you really want to be doing and who you really want to be. This episode features one of my favorite comedians, Roy Wood Jr. And this is actually the second time that I've interviewed him. I interviewed him back in, I believe, 2016 when I first moved to New York for a podcast that I used to host called It's All True. I'm actually going to put a section of that at the end of the credits in this episode because he told a fantastic story about his dad. And if you follow Roy Wood Jr. on Twitter, for instance, or X, or whatever you want to call it, he lists his name as Roy Wood Jr., ex-Jedi. I didn't really get any details about why he chose that, but I do think that fatherhood is a through line in the Star Wars franchise and in Roy Wood Jr.'s life. First of all, he is a junior. He has a stand-up special called Father Figure, and I do think that he's sort of a father figure to a lot of comedians, specifically young Black comedians trying to find their way. He's done a lot of little things for me that he probably doesn't even remember. And I had a unique nervousness leading up to this interview. It's because before I started doing comedy, literally like the year before I started going to open mics in Riverside, California, and then moving to Chicago with my friend Ian Abramson to do it seriously, I would come home from work and watch episodes of Conan, the TBS episodes of Conan, and I would be in awe of all the comedians that showed up to do sets there. So to go from watching Roy Wood Jr. do a late night set on Conan after I came home to my parents' house from working at the movie theater after giving up on City College to interviewing him for my old podcast at Union Hall in 2016 to this is a lot. And I think that's it. It's between that first interview with Roy and now that gives me an extra layer of the nervousness because I have a profound deal of respect for him. And when you're making your way as a comic, you really want to build up that infinity gauntlet of impressions that you've made on comedians that you respect. And a part of this podcast is about me getting rid of a certain frustration that I had as I navigated through various levels of the industry, doing a lot of behind the scenes work, being a podcast producer, being a video editor, doing stand-up, and never feeling like I'm firing on all cylinders with those things. I would be in positions where I just knew that someone that I wanted to see me as a comic saw me for what I was doing, which was a podcast producer. And I had a number of situations like that with Roy. I think 3 of the different podcasts that I produced at 3 different places, I would book him. And I just had a weird thing about that. I don't know what it was. Roy made a lot of headlines recently after leaving The Daily Show. A lot of people, me included, kind of felt like, it was his time to take over the show. So it's been really interesting for me to listen to all of the interviews that he's done since, to track how he's navigating this new space, getting further into touring and comedy, and further away from the structured and often restricting land of daily television. In this interview, he gives some really interesting tidbits on the state of the industry, what he wants to do next, and how he got here. So please enjoy this conversation with Roy Wood Jr. I'm a big fan of yours, and in a weird way, some of our I think we've only met each other maybe max 5 times in person, but you are in some ways a reason that I started this show because I have profound respect for you. And when I first moved to New York, I was like, why does this great comedian know who I am? Like, you would be retweeting some of my stuff every now and then. But I was always working in these weird behind the scenes type jobs. So then I would see you in the context of a podcast that I'm producing at Vice, for instance. And I would beat myself up like, damn, Roy's seeing me not doing stand up right now. Like, I'm never going to impress this guy in the ideal way.
It's fine.
But now I've gotten to this point where it's like, okay, I can actually accept that I am just a strange, multifaceted comedian person. It's not, I don't have to be, the guy who's just on stage. I can incorporate all these other things into what I do.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I retweet anything that's funny. That's probably to my own detriment on Twitter.
I know that when you do a lot of interviews now, they're trying to get some answers about The Daily Show. I only have one that I think I haven't heard you answer before. And I just want to know what it felt like when you had your week hosting the show. Like, were there any anxieties that you were feeling?
A few, but thankfully I had the White House Correspondents' Dinner on the horizon in 3 weeks. And that's what I was really stressing. Like that, I was like almost vomiting every night. Whereas with The Daily Show and running the desk, there were performance things that I was worried about, but I don't think I was like nervous in the same sense as I was the first night as a correspondent. This audience already knows me. They trust me. What can I do that's uniquely different than what I do as a correspondent? I think that was the main thing, was trying to figure that out. But hosting that was a dream come true, man. Like just to sit in that chair, even if it's just for a week, like that's a dope ass thing to be able to say you did. Like that was cool.
I remember watching it, like, making sure I'm going to watch every single episode of this when it comes out. And I put you in this pantheon of great comedians when they get a show or when they get the opportunity to host something on television. I always feel like the greatest at it are the ones who have some history in broadcasting. And I could see your history in broadcasting shining on that show. And you're also someone, because I've been watching a lot of your stand-up clips and I've been putting all the context together of people saying, you are the modern Dick Gregory, et cetera, and knowing your history in radio. And when I see you in interviews and when I see you on stage, I feel like you have a keen awareness of your voice, which is important for stand-up. But almost more than the physicality, I get the sense that you think about the radio edit of it. You think about the audio experience of your jokes, because I've seen like some of your Comedy Cellar, just like the clips that you put up. And I'm like, I can see this on a record. Like I can see listening to this in the car and it getting all the exact same laughs. I don't have to visually see this to understand what's going on.
Thanks, man. Well, I don't consider myself anywhere close, because Dick Gregory was an activist who happened to be funny. We call him a comedian because there's no other activist comedian. There's no word for activist comedian combo meal. I think he for sure was an entertainer, without a doubt. But he often took breaks from stand-up to go hit the streets and fight for what he believed in. And, I don't think I'm as adamant. I think I've tried to come in and just give perspective on a lot of issues versus telling you exactly what the solution is. But I think if you look at my perspective on this, you'll know how I feel about it. Like there's enough rooted in there. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm thankful for the comparison, but I try to craft jokes in a way where, I'm not a physical act out comedian to start with. So let's start there. And then on top of that, I'm not really a guy that does a lot of regular vocal work and impressions and all of that. So I guess it just inherently makes me easy to listen to. The only thing I'm really thinking about when I'm constructing jokes is and this is terrible, but this is how you have to think about jokes now. All right, that's an 8-minute joke. Is there a 90-second run in there that is a cohesive, complete thought? Okay, cool. If not, then we need to restructure this joke in a way. And then within my act, I will have one joke that is a long form joke that you need to hear in its entirety. But every other joke is a collection of 90-second jokes or 60-second jokes. And then if it's a great joke, then I can put a cherry on top at the end of that entire run. But, I try to build material based off my thoughts and ideologies. And then from that, word it in a way where the joke could be broken down modularly.
I love that in your father figure special, you kind of start as if as if you already said the setup. You start with the word "but," I think.
Yeah, but because the argument was already understood nationally. The first sentence out my mouth in that special is, but if we get rid of the Confederate flag, that's what everybody's talking about, get rid of the flag, take down the money. Okay, but if we do this.
The first big question to ask on the show is, what was the first genre that inspired you? It doesn't have to be comedy connected, but when you were a kid, what was the first sort of amorphous thing that drew you in?
To entertainment, or just something I was drawn to?
Yeah, just something that you were drawn to. Like for me, it's science fiction.
I remember the first movie I watched was Airplane, Zucker Brothers joint. I didn't get all the jokes, but I remember that. I'd have to say sports. I grew up playing Little League Baseball, and that was a nice bonding experience. Sports, and I had these robot sets. There was this motorized robot sets. Lego Technics basically do the trick now, but I had this motorized robot set called Robotics that I got for Christmas one year in the 80s, and Robotics was the
So
it was good.
Were you making the robots play sports? Is there some connection there?
No, but I mean the creativity of what I could do and what I could build, and to get all Dr. Seuss on your "Oh, the places we will go," type of vibe. But yeah, I would say probably sports, or just construction, just Legos, robots, things like that. That's probably the first thing I really fell in love with. But if we're talking about something that continued on into adulthood, into middle school and high school, and even now, adulthood, I would say sports.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about the Legos and the robots for a second. Do you remember the things that you were building? Do you remember the things that you were constructing?
There was a great deal of just robots and bases. I was big into housing for my other toys. Like Legos were, all right, we need a G.I. Joe base. I would keep the styrofoam from the packaging from any toy that I got, and figure out a way to all right, if I cut out this panel, cut this wall, move this wall, boom, now this is a base. And then if I put it in the bathtub with me, now it's a floating base. Take that, put that with the boat. Now I have a way to dock the boat with this floating army. So yeah, that was the thing, like construction in that regard.
So you're like a legitimate war general. You were
yeah. Yeah, it's more logistics.
Yeah.
How can we boost morale by having a place for this guy to stay? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's talk about, I get that they're in the war zone, but what happens when he goes home? It's almost like you're playing And for sports, what was the connection there? You said you love the camaraderie of it, but is it attached to a memory of going to a lot of games, or did you like the circle of family and friends around the TV to watch a baseball game, for instance?
No, it was very solo. My experience with baseball was very isolated. My parents are not sports fans. I can't name you a single time my father ever discussed sports. If the game was on and I was watching, with NBA Finals, Jordan era Bulls, he might watch it, but he didn't care about that type of shit. My mom didn't either. They were both educators, 3 degrees apiece between them. Folks like that ain't thinking about sports. Not black folks that used to march. Their minds in another place.
I've never really thought about that, but do you find that commonality of black people who were in the civil rights movement not engaging in sports as much as their children, for instance? Or
I wouldn't put a sweeping generality on it, but I would imagine sports could only go to a certain point if you came up in a time where you couldn't do it professionally.
Yeah.
What are you watching that for? You can't even aspire to do that. I don't know how many kids back in the day were wanting to be like Sandy Koufax, because Jackie Robinson wasn't in the league. You know what I mean? Maybe so, if you're a black kid in 45, pre-Jackie Robinson. But no, I just enjoyed the camaraderie with friends, and sports was an easy way to make friends. It is the easiest way to make friends in any neighborhood, is to play sports. But then I would come home and start watching baseball and stuff like that. Like I would watch a lot of baseball because I wanted to get better. So I treated watching Cubs games during the day like some sort of like exercise and like a drill, like it's drills, you know.
I guess, I'm trying to understand the sentiment that you had about a certain generation of Black people not connecting with sports. And I guess it's also like a certain generation of Black people being like, hell no, I never thought about wanting to be the president. But now there's a new age of young Black people who feel like that's that's attainable.
Yeah, that's doable. That's on the list. So, yeah, I don't know. Sports is the one thing I've always consistently played, to no end.
Did it feel a little rebellious to be watching sports?
No, it felt escapist. Like I definitely like with sports, I definitely felt like I was able to be somewhere. It's Alabama. It's Birmingham, Alabama in the 90s. So it's not exactly Miami, or LA per se. But it was just escapist. It's like, this is a fun thing to do. So that's what I did for the most part as a child. I watched baseball. I collected baseball cards and read Mad Magazine and Nintendo Power. Well, Game Pro, because I had a Sega Genesis at that point. I stopped with Nintendo Power. Once I got the Sega, I got Game Pro and Electronic Gaming Monthly. It wasn't even called EGM yet. It was by its full name, his daddy.
How supportive were your parents in your engagement with sports?
My mom was very supportive. I mean, they signed me up and they picked me up from the but my mom spent the better part of my childhood in grad school than law school. She didn't have time to come to no game. She's at night school. And my dad was a morning DJ and a night DJ, and he slept in the afternoons for the most part. So he didn't really come to a lot of games. I think total from K through 12, I think my mom maybe came to like 3 or 4 games total, like over the course of the entirety of me playing organized sports. And that's counting basketball at the Y, like the boys club, anything organized. Your parents just working. So that was just a place where I got to roam and like be myself alone, away from other people and stuff, like away from adults and stuff.
Yeah. Did you actually appreciate that element of it, or is it kind of you appreciate both sides of that? Because there's a way that is, there's 2 different TV shows that can be made about it. One is that it's sad that your parents aren't showing up. The other is that pure excitement that you have this freedom to be yourself without your parents encroaching on that.
I mean, I was fine with it. It didn't bother me. Like, I was never sad. Like, I didn't see other kids with their daddy and go, "Where's my daddy?" My be working. All right, cool. Well, this is what I'm doing. I'm having fun. I don't give a if y'all here to watch me or not. Like, the idea of, look at me, mom, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Isn't this cool? Like, I've never had to. And in a way, it's probably been the perfect precursor to prepping for stand-up comedy, in that I've never really been attached to the approval or acceptance of my parents.
Yeah.
I've never desired that. So I've never had a reason to look into the stands and see if my mom, which oddly has made things more weird for me now, because a lot of my family and a lot of people that are close to me, they are very supportive. I don't really know how to receive that. I don't know what to do with that. I'm here, don't you? Because you can tell they're waiting for like a more special, sincere moment with you, in a way. Well, I'm here and I'm just so proud of you. And these things are all true. They are very proud, and they are here to support. But I think I'm just so far gone past the idea of anybody that means anything to me needing to approve what I do, that it doesn't necessarily register. My mom is the only one that it registers. Like, no woman I've dated, I ain't never looked at some girl I was dating and, "Why you don't come to none of my comedy shows?" Does that mean you don't support and love me? And I'm like that. And I feel like that's the behavior of my that had people show up to all their when they was young, and they equate presence to love. I don't. That's all it is. I have a nice little self-sufficient system in place that works for me when it comes to, support.
I feel like that's a key word that's going to keep popping up here, is system, because you had, you're creating systems with your Legos. There's a system to sports. And there's a system to, I know that you care about system because I remember when the COVID pandemic first hit, there was an article that you wrote for Vulture about how stand-ups need to prepare for the worst. Like, it feels like you're the type of person who's always creating a plan, like looking at the system that exists now, thinking about the system that might emerge after that, and figuring out what your path within those two things are going to be.
Yeah. I'm always looking ahead. I mean, that's what baseball is. Baseball is life. As you're rounding second, you're looking at third base, but before you round second. So even as you're about to hit one particular goal or milestone or mile marker, I'm already up and looking and trying to figure out where I'm headed. I think that's the beautiful thing about baseball. There is the constant need to think about the future. It's constantly about, if this goes here, these things are going to happen and I'm going to do this. But if the ball goes here or the ball goes over there, these things are going to happen. And instead, I need to do that. And so I think that's like that's the yin and yang of it all. And, you know, I look at the industry and I'm constantly, like, even now, you look at where AI is going and the fact that studios are going to be making less television, which means the ideas are going to be less experimental. The ideas are going to be less risky. We're going to fall back into a period of traditionalism in television. I think that'll be similar to what we saw in the 70s and 80s when TV was far more successful and stable. And I believe that the networks erroneously think that simplicity of idea is what will help stabilize the market. But I think part of what made TV back then was that it was communal. I think that's the hardest thing with television now, is that TV was such a communal thing for us as a country, but now with streaming and binging and, you know, like, nobody watches things all at the same time. The idea of appointment viewing is less and less of a priority as the generation who never owned a TV starts to get older into proper TV watching age. Like, TV watching age is like late 20s to your 50s, you know, 60s. You know, if you ain't pregnant and living a regular 9-to-5 life by but most of these kids are, but they just don't with TVs because they have streaming. They have a phone. They watch everything in the phone. Like, they don't even buy TVs like that no more. It's something to consider.
Do you think that a part of that is the reason that you decided to leave The Daily Show? Because when you are performing stand-up, you are forcing this very in-the-moment communal experience that I feel is probably way more satisfying than taping a show, not knowing when or where people are going to see it, and it's never going to be in the proper context of that feeling taping this in front of that crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of that. It's like, oh, okay, well, this seems to be different now. I mean, late night television is still communal in a sense because we're talking about a shared experience. But I don't think that it is the same as when we all watch sports or the Super Bowl or an award show, communal in that sense. But yeah, it's just about, as I'm getting ready to round second and look up at third and figure out what I'm going to do. Yeah, that was part of what leaving The Daily Show was rooted in. It's like, okay, well, let's see where this market's going. And if I'm going to figure out how to get ahead of the curve on this, I think I need space and time to do that. So now is probably the right time to leave the show so I can figure that out.
Before you started doing stand-up, what would you say the first official craft was that you pursued? Like the first thing, not the first day job, but the first craft that you're like, this is going to be my thing.
I don't know about a craft, but I wanted to be a firefighter until my senior year of high school. Like, that was going to be the job. Like, there's nothing else to discuss.
What was the logic behind that? I mean, it feels like that connects to you with the toys as a kid, because there's a set of things, there's a system to it. Yeah.
I'm also a little bit of a pyro, so like there's that. if we're gonna be honest, little pyro. But the idea of just doing that job didn't scare me. Like, oh, this seems like fun work to do. Let's give this a shot. And I was like taking extra chemistry classes so I could eventually be a fire inspector and all of that. And then Stuart Scott came on ESPN. When I saw Stuart Scott, I was like, that's the job. he talks like me and talks about sports. We do that every day at the lunch table and at baseball practice. That seems much easier than chemistry. So bye-bye firefighting. Straight to that. But if you're asking if I was good at something, I'd say I was good at grilling meat. I know that's such a Southern thing. Bro, I was a beast on a barbecue grill. I couldn't cook worth a shit. You give me some charcoal.
It's that pyro again.
Yeah, buddy. I was in there. Oh, that's where we went to retire G.I. Joe figures and Transformers. They all died in the fire. We let them go. Yeah, you have to tell them goodbye. Like if they lost a leg. Like once toys were broken, then they always died in a fire mission. It's like in television when you know an actor's leaving a show and then they just figure out a way to kill them off.
What were the steps once you locked in on that, wanting to be a sports commentator? When you're talking with your friends, when you're at the barbershop, do you start trying to channel what you're saying a little bit more and start from there?
No, not really. Like I was already a fan of Harry Carey and Steve Stone from watching Cubs games ad nauseum. But for me, it was just, I know I need to major in journalism. So let's start there. But then on top of that, I know I probably need to start articulating a little more. So I tried to be a little more articulate, but I just figured I'll go to school and I'll go to journalism school. You know, my father's in broadcast. I had two brothers in broadcast. So, all right, this seems like the family thing. Well, I'll be damned. I gravitated right back to it. So no big deal. But no, I didn't start trying to be the thing. I just had a goal. Like you were raised in the South in the 90s. Parents are just telling you, get the education, because that's what they marched for, and they want you to make sure you get what they got beat up for, which I can understand. You got your ass whooped for me to be able to go to this school, so I guess I got to go to this school, even though it wasn't my dream, it was your dream. You know, so once you have the goal, you felt like you knew where you were going for at least that point in your life. And then, of course, the next mile marker is when you're actually in college and then deciding if you still like that thing. But for me at the time, it was just, oh, journalism, cool. All right, I'm going to keep working 30 hours a week, breaking child labor laws so I can afford sneakers. So, you know, it wasn't even like I went to visit a fire station or anything like that up until that time. And after that, it's not like I went to look at TV stations to see what was going on and get curious about which you think that's what I should have done considering all of the access I had.
Yeah, your dad's hosting 2 radio shows.
My brother was the evening anchor at the NBC affiliate, NBC 13. So yeah, I could have just told my dad, hey, I want to do journalism now. Can I go watch my brother do this and then stand around and then hopefully get fast tracked to being better than all these I'm going to be taking classes with? And go, no, I'm going to go work at the Subway.
I get this sense of friction that you have with seriousness, which I think is fascinating because as you get into comedy, that is one of those things where you're trying to make people laugh, you're trying to be silly, but you also want to be taken seriously at it. Do you agree with that sentiment that you have a sort of friction? You know, you had very serious parents and you're someone who's just like, this is not something I'm interested in that way. How did that manifest in your life if that was the case?
Yeah, I don't think I was necessarily, I don't know. I just enjoyed humor as an escape. I wasn't even a class clown. I was looking for things that made me laugh. I wasn't trying to make everybody else laugh. I was just much more of a guy who enjoyed relaxing and just existing, you know, like that was always my thing. Like I didn't really care about structure and authority, but I wasn't a rebel. I did what I was supposed to do. Yes, sir. No, sir. No, ma'am. I went to church. I was in kids choir. I did all the stuff for a while, but ultimately I wasn't a rebel, but I definitely would much rather be chilling. Like I was in the gifted program for the most part up until halfway through high school. And like you're on this AP diploma track to get the super diploma. And this is the diploma that'll really get you in school. If you take all the super classes, then you have it's like supersizing your diploma is what AP credits are, right? I got about halfway through that I remember my junior year, I had AP US history. And I was like, oh, man. Give me regular history. I don't need all this shit. And to this day, it's one of the best decisions I made. Like, it's not that I was anti-academics, but it was just like, I don't really care about history like that. Not enough to be stressed out with all this extra homework. I'm good. I'd rather go outside and crack jokes, or like I would just rather be doing other things. So how quickly can I be done with the thing you want me to do, so I can go do the shit I want to do?
So you're always kind of looking for the cheat codes to get to that level.
Well, not necessarily a cheat. Well, in a way, but it's more of just let me hurry up and do it. Tell me what to do. All right, there, I'm done. Can I go play now? Can I sit in class and draw now? It wasn't so much that, I think, it wasn't so much that I felt like I was smarter than a lot of kids or had this high IQ or something. It's just I did the work faster. I learned how to do it because I would rather be playing right now. So, yeah, I'm going to learn how to do this and do it faster than all the other kids, because the quicker I'm done, the quicker I can get out my drawing book and draw pictures of firefighters in action. And that's what I used to do in class.
That's kind of the best way to do it, it seems like. I feel like there's a thing where people want their kids to, with joy, do all these things, but all we really want is for them to do exactly what you did as a kid. Just get it done and know that the light at the end of the tunnel is that once you get it done, you can have fun. We don't need to dabble in the nuance of, did you have fun at school today or whatever? Just treat it like a job.
Yeah. It's just, it was a job. Like, this has to be done. So, okay, cool. There, it's done.
When you hosted The Daily Show, you had a whole segment about this, and it feels like maybe you were waiting your whole life to have a segment dedicated to the state of higher learning. Yeah, education. Of it,
and whether or not it's something that we still need to be doing. And, I just think that college, they've been looking at college as a business. Therefore, they're looking at the students as customers. So then if I'm a customer at your business, then I have every right to decide whether or not this business is worth my time and money.
Yeah, and I always felt like, too, like, okay, I'll do this test, but this test is kind of half for the teacher to see how well you're doing. I shouldn't feel bad.
Yeah, I took prep classes, all those ACT, SAT standardized testing classes. Like, I took all of that stuff, man. And it just, I don't know. It was like, well, I don't know what the point is of any of this, but if this is what I have to do, so y'all will leave me the alone. Cool.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre will be right back after the break. You Are the Genre is an independently produced podcast, and if you'd like to show it some financial support, there is a newsletter component to it. You can find a link to it in the show notes or at youarethegenre.com. You can, of course, sign up for the free version of the newsletter, but if you decide on upgrading to paid, you get so much more, plus advanced episodes of this show. I usually use this break to talk about things that I've been enjoying. I don't have sponsored ads or anything like that. And this one is something that I co-created and equally enjoyed. A few years back, Andrew Sanford, not the white Andy Sanford, who's a great comic. I'm talking about the black Andrew Sanford, or the half-black Andrew Sanford. Really talented writer. He told me about an odd chemistry test experience that he had in auditioning for a show. I'd never even heard of a chemistry test, which added to the strangeness. And I said, hey, you should write something about that. And now it's a short film, somehow starring me and co-directed by my friend Jim Fagan. If you're in New York and you'd like to see this short film, Chemistry Test, you can watch it May 31st in Brooklyn for Tootsie's Video Vault at Littlefield. It's 7 p.m. doors and an 8 p.m. show. I don't know, come see me on the big screen. And after that, check out my newsletter. Get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we? I know that you were hosting radio at one point, but were you actually a sports commentator at some point?
No, I never did any of the stuff that Stuart Scott did. Ironically, I have ended up at ESPN in some capacities just as a, contributor and, funny joke guy in the middle of some panel about a sport that's relevant to me. But I never ended up in actual sports debate culture or true play-by-play, none of that. The crazy thing is that the one thing I do play-by-play on is when my son is playing with his toys, I'll give a play-by-play of the toy. So I'll pretend to be the play-by-play guy and the color commentator guy. And trying to do two different voices and stuff like that. So, that's cool. But I think you learn what you learn, and it's a path. And journalism definitely opened me up to the styles of interviewing and how to talk to people and how to engage people. The thing that journalism probably taught me the most was what questions should you be asking as a professional, curious person. And if comedy, as I believe it to be, is just a form of journalism, then the questions that I can pose within my act, within the thesis of a joke, then that itself becomes journalistic. So if I can have interesting questions and pose interesting questions or pose interesting lines of thought, then from that, I can birth material that nobody else is thinking of. You have this full Confederate flag debate, and then the question just becomes, okay, but now how am I going to know who the dangerous white people are? Okay, that could have been an op-ed in any newspaper.
Yeah.
And it's silly, you're into Louis Grizzard funny columnist land at that point. But a lot of my jokes, if rewritten and structured in a certain way, could be op-eds in most newspapers nationally. And so I had a bit years ago about the idea that most mass shooters have terrible haircuts. And that one way for us to start knowing who needs to be checked on, like if we're not going to have background checks, we need barbers to flag any customer they haven't seen in over 2 months. And that becomes like the registry from which the feds will just check off name. Go visit these people. Wellness checks, if you will. So that's a bizarro joke that, ultimately, it gets into something a little more physical.
But there's something there, because it comes down to self-esteem in a way. Like if we just sent barbers to all schools, but especially white schools, we might be living in a different world.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is where it's like, oh, here's the weird thought. And I think that's what journalism gave me. Journalism really was a good gift in that regard, that it really helped me to focus a little more.
Well, it's funny because before you walk on stage in Father Figure, you hand your kid over to this guy that has a Frederick Douglass haircut. And I think you say, like, here you go, Frederick Douglass. But the title of his piece, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, sounds like the beginning of a stand-up special. Like you could have walked out on stage on stage at that time and said that in a certain way and gotten a laugh.
Yeah. That would have been like you're just a little more chipper, and it's the same intention. Yeah. I think that's kind of where I'm trying to go a lot of the time. But there's a balance of how angry do I want to be in this joke.
Yeah. Emphasis on the word slave, and then you keep coming back to it as your refrain during the special. What to the slave? Yeah. So you have, you are Roy Wood Jr. Your father was in journalism. How much of the pressure of being a junior and of legacy do you feel? And as a father, do you in some ways place an element of that onto your child, or do you have a newfound understanding of your father in some way?
I think my son deserves the freedom to live independent of whatever legacy I've set for myself. So first thing to help him with that was to not name him the third. So if he just wants to be incidentally my child, he can claim it. But growing up under my dad, you're always going to be compared to him, like even now. And then I came back into radio in Birmingham, and I worked at the same station that he worked at. And that was daunting for a bit. But also, you got to remember, I'm not doing hard news. I'm doing regular comedy. I'm the morning show co-host. My father was the proper newsman. So, inherently our jobs just weren't the same, thankfully. But I'd say that there's a degree of, it took me a while, but I definitely have made my own name for myself. The only thing I can compare it to is maybe Ken Griffey Jr., in the sense that Griffey had enough of a career that it stands to be respected separate and apart from his father's career. which is a great thing.
Yeah, I haven't really figured out how I feel about this, but I should be a junior, but I'm the second. So, because they didn't want people to call me junior growing up. But I don't know what it's like to have, my dad didn't have any like entertainment or media status. So there's none of that sort of pressure. And oddly, I hope that he gets some excitement out of essentially seeing his name on TV credits. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I have some friends that are the seconds and the thirds, and I just think it sounds more regal. I think it's cooler. Where junior just feels like, motherfucker, it's all about me. That's why I named you me. There's something about junior that just feels a little more. The second, like no one compares like what King Louis the 12th to the 13th. No one asks about Louis 1 through 10.
Yeah.
But if it's like junior, you're like, this motherfucking guy.
How do you feel about that word throughout your life? And also, I mean, when you started doing stand-up and you chose your stage name, why did you keep the junior there? Could you have put your middle name? Like, is there a reasoning behind that?
It's probably more of a tribute to my dad. Our relationship wasn't always the most solid, so I deliberately did not go by junior a lot growing up, which infuriated him. And I loved it because it was the only thing that could get him. It's the only thing I could do to kind of thump him behind the ear. And I loved it, bro. I loved it. Then he dies my senior year of high school. I'm like, all right, it, I'll be junior now. Pay tribute. Like, in a weird way. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing is for people who live in Birmingham and who are from the place, for the people who know my father and know his legacy, you need to know that I am his child. He did a lot to be respected for Black people in the Black community. So yeah, you need to know that his legacy is being carried on in some sort of shape, form, and that it's not just some incidental thing that there just happens to be a guy named Roy Wood, the same as that civil rights journalist that I used to listen to all the time. So, it's definitely carrying the name professionally, definitely was just a tip of the hat.
And do you feel like elements of that friction that you had with your father and the sort of natural difficulties of comparison, do you feel like that is in some way what fueled you throughout your career? Like you don't want to be the Roy Wood Jr. that fails. You don't want to bear that title with the level of weight that it has and have the Sandman come on stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a degree of, okay, you got the pressure of legacy. But because I'm doing something different, same but different, I think I was protected from that. Like nobody says you're just like your father. It's always, I remembered your father would be proud, or this is similar to what he does. I'm not just at city council meetings pressing white politicians about Black issues or embedding myself with every human rights movement that's happening domestically, as my father did, and internationally. My father was, he was in Soweto during the riots. He was in Rhodesia during their civil war. In Zimbabwe now. He was in Vietnam with Black soldiers. Like, if I were truly being the embodiment of my father, I would be in Gaza right now reporting on the war. But I'm doing a podcast and preparing to write a book and perform comfortably in Boston and talk about the issues that my dad talked about. But I'm not anywhere near one-to-one. And I think most people who know his legacy, they know that and they see that. And so I've been able to skate free of that. I'll use athletics as a comparison. I'll give you two versions of it. I think what you're talking about, what you're asking about, is the equivalent of Walter Payton Jr., who played football and played running back. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's son played basketball. I think he was a forward in Kentucky, Western Kentucky. Michael Jordan Jr., or even I think it was Marcus Jordan and Jeffrey Jordan played at Central Florida. They're not even named Michael, and they were compared to their fathers simply because they play basketball. Bronny James, all they do is talk about his daddy. Compare that to Dennis Rodman's daughter, who plays on the U.S. women's national team. And it's understood she's Dennis Rodman's daughter, but also she's good. We can assume there's some athletic genes, but there's no way she's dealing with the same pressure that Walter Payton Jr. had to deal with, or that Jeffrey Jordan had to deal with, you know? So I feel like I'm more of a Dennis Rodman daughter type analogy to my father than I am a direct Kareem Jr. type situation.
When you look back at the first pursuits, firefighting, sports commentator, how do you feel about the feeling that you had that inspired them at the time?
Sports, I'm still around. You know, I do as much as I can with Major League Baseball. I still try to be a booster for my high school baseball team. You know, I do stuff like that. That's a regular occurrence. Firefighting, I've tried to write a TV show or two, but there's been so many shows about firefighting that it's hard to squeeze one into the marketplace. I sold a show to Fox once about the National Guard. That would be a fun show to redo and try and, you know, put together or whatever. But the idea of rescuers and first responders and selfless people, you know, the military, things like that, I think that's all. It's still a place where my curiosities lie. So if I can't do the job, then maybe it's about remembering how to. Maybe if I can't do the job, then maybe it's about how can I show people and uplift these people or do something to help those occupations. So that's kind of what I'm into right now.
Your Twitter handle is Roywood Jr. X Jedi, and this comes to mind because you're talking about selfless people, heroic people. Why choose the term? Why not just Jedi? Why X Jedi?
Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. The bio, like in my bio, is like, don't take me serious. Because The Daily Show carries this degree, this air of, you are beyond us. You know all of the foreign policies and how to solve this. You just happen to make it. No, I don't. Jon Stewart might know the shit. Trevor knows a lot of shit. Don't come around me asking and thinking I know as much as them and gonna tell you I don't know nothing, man. You think I'm a Jedi? I'm not. I used to be smart. Now I'm dumb. So don't take me serious. Come here and laugh, but please do not lock in your claws on thinking that these are all of the right answers.
I think, the connective tissue of everything is that for you, it seems like it's the questions more than the answers. And that's what you described with the journalism element, how comedy is journalism. I often think the best jokes are questions. and then you kind of extrapolate on all the nuances around the question, but you don't really have an answer. You just think it's important that people really think about it, and hopefully someone with an answer comes to that conclusion based off of your line of questioning, maybe. Yeah.
That's it. That's literally it.
But I do just want to say that I've already said it. I have profound respect for you. You're one of the funniest people on earth, and I think that I hope that you're going to find your next thing. I wanted to talk to you because you have been open about the fact that you are in a process of exploration right now, waiting to see what the official, real, next true Roywood Jr. project is. And actually saying that, when I knew that I was going to interview you, every now and then you'll post something cryptic, and I made sure to save this one because I just really wanted to know, okay, what is
those 2 a.m. tweets, huh?
I know. Yeah. This was maybe it was a tweet too. This was an Instagram story. You wrote, "If we are not monsters, we're food, and I could never be food."
Oh,
what does that mean, Roy?
It's, as Snoop Dogg and the West Side people would say, ride or get rode on. As Beanie Siegel and the East Siders would say, get down or lay down. But that quote is from the show Top Boy on Netflix. And the quote itself is about, you can either be a horrible person or you can be the person that has horrible things done to you. And I just looked at that quote and interpreted it as a way about taking power, you know, in terms of taking charge of stuff and not letting people treat you any kind of way. And, you know, you don't bully me, I do the bullying, you know, and it's not necessarily a proclamation of my desire to treat people like in the entertainment industry, but it is a proclamation that I'm not going to be pushed around and I'm not going to be treated any kind of way. So you have to be as aggressive as the people that you're competing with in this industry. And that's unfortunate, but that's what it is. So that's what I'm on now. So that's where that one came from. I was really pissed when I posted that because somebody was trying to roll me. Somebody's trying to roll me. And I'm like, nah.
And I feel like that's the best example of how, it is a sport, entertainment, and you're great at sports. You have a keen interest in sports. I've loved some of the things you've posted about how, you used to have a physically printed comedy resume that you would send to bookers.
Well, yeah, that's what you needed back then. I would still, if I was a young comic now, I'd still do it now just to annoy a booker. I know you're not going to book me, but now I'm going to with you and give you to throw away. Just to be an asshole.
How frustrated are you with the state of the machinery of the industry right now?
Not frustrated, but it is like a bunch of people all betting table minimums. And they all think that they're going to hit it big, betting table minimums, creatively, stylistically, etc. And I think that that's the bigger issue with the industry, is that you can be a dreamer, but the decisions are made by people who don't believe in dreams. They believe in profits. So that's what we're up against now more than ever. All of the creative people in the diverse departments and all the high concept people, those departments are gone. They folded. Those people have been fired. So what you're left with is a bunch of people who are just thinking about metrics and not ideation. So that's frustrating, but it's also not permanently sustainable. So it could be come up with an idea now, or it could be lie in wait for a couple years and then come back and kick people's teeth in. So we got options.
Something that I don't think I realized until this conversation is how much of an interest you've had in creating and developing narrative television shows. When I think of Roy Wood Jr., I typically think stand-up, The Daily Show, commentary. Is this something that you hope to, in some way, be the next level of the things that you do? And what is it about the Roy Wood Jr. energy, the genre of Roy Wood Jr. that you think would permeate it?
Yeah, I think that for me, it's just about telling stories about interesting people and things and problems, which is all we did at The Daily Show. So I'm not really changing that MO that much, to be honest. Now it's just a matter of figuring out the best and most efficient way to tell those stories. And sometimes it's on stage, but I really want to do more with writing and producing because there's longevity in that. I don't want to just behold the rest of my career to someone deciding whether or not I'm worthy enough to be on camera. Like that thing that I don't like, that I don't want to do. So you have to force people into seeing you as something different. Because otherwise we put people in boxes. It's human nature. That's what we do. It's like the predictive behavior type stuff. They can show you a sheet of words and there's one letter wrong in each word, but your brain predictively completes the word and you're able to decipher the message even though none of the words are spelled correctly. I believe entertainment to be the same way. But it can be reversed, because you can see someone as one way, as one thing, and that's the thing. But then it's on you to reverse it. Like, since I did Daily Show and gained steam, I get movie offers and I get opportunities to do movies and films and TV shows. Pretty much everything I've been in a suit because that's how I'm perceived. Only Murders in the Building, I had on a leather jacket, thankfully. And Last OG, I played a real countrified ass mover. But even that, I was just a version of myself. Like, I'm not trying to be Jamie Foxx and disappear into Ray Charles, but also don't want to keep wearing suits for every movie. So it's going to be on me. But I'm not mad at the industry because the industry, you treat talent like predictive text. So it's on me to create new personas that force you to see me differently. And so that's what I'm working on.
Because you want to be in a firefighter's outfit.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks for doing the show. It means a lot. And I can't wait to see you in that firefighter's outfit.
Absolutely.
With a robot. That's the show. Big thanks to Roy Wood Jr. for stopping by the show. For more on him, go to roywoodjr.com. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Next episode, comedian, writer, and actor Anna Suzuki joins me on the podcast. But if you become a paid subscriber to my newsletter, you can listen to it a week ahead of the normies. So this is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you are the genre. And if you stay tuned until the end of this song, you'll hear a fantastic story from Roy Wood Jr.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do? I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
In each episode of It's All True, I ask my guests to reveal a headline for a funny, personal, true story. This week's guest is Roy Wood Jr., and here's his headline.
Roy Wood Sr. blows brilliant business opportunity. And this is a true story. My father is from Chicago, and my dad was an old school dude. He was the first news director at WVON in Chicago, the voice of the Negro.
Good afternoon, everyone. Roy Wood reporting.
During the Civil Rights Movement, this radio station was trusted with delivering relevant information to the black community. It was essentially the black CNN.
As I sit here meditating very deeply, a voice spake it unto me, saying,
WVON Cicero.
Half-hour headline.
So my father hires a guy by the name of Don Cornelius.
The host of Soul Train.
Correct. Don Cornelius works underneath my father in the 70s, and while he's, doing his radio news stuff or whatever during the day, he's out in the clubs at night. And he's, seeing what's going on, and he's seeing that there's a certain movement happening. And so American Bandstand at the time, that was one of the few shows that showcased music artists. It's white people dancing, and it's fucking Dick Clark, and he's doing his thing. Don Cornelius can see him. Pretty bright idea. But he doesn't have the money. He goes back to my father and a couple other people in the Chicago area. He asked my father for $1,000, which in the 70s, that's like fucking, 34, conversion rates, but inflation. But it's a lot of money. Like even now, $1,000, it would, like, our friendship would bank on you paying me back. And so Don Cornelius goes to my father. He goes, Roy, dig this play. I don't know how black people talk, but dig this jive turkey. I got an idea.
He had a microphone in his hand, too.
And he basically explains to my father the concept for what would become the television show known as Soul Train. And he goes, if they have their artists on TV and they don't put any black artists on their show, Dick Clark only puts black artists on when they've already blown through the roof. There's plenty of good talent right here in the city.
60 non-stop minutes across the tracks of your mind into the exciting world of soul.
I just need the money to shoot the pilot, and then I'll sell it to WGN. Once I sell ads, I'll give you back your $1,000. So my father says, cool. Don Cornelius shoots the pilot for Soul Train, but he can't sell it. For whatever reason, nobody's fucking with it because it's a black show, it's a black host, there's a bunch of musicians, and there's black people, there's fucking afros and shit, and they don't know what the hell is going on. So it's taken them a longer time than expected to recoup the initial cost. Meanwhile, my pops needs his money. So my pops goes to Don Cornelius, and he goes, yo, man, don't you owe me $1,000? And Don Cornelius pleads his case. He goes, trust me, Roy, when this shit blows, it's going to be one of the most amazing things you've ever seen. Nobody else is doing this. This is going to be a movement, brother. I'm telling you, the Train of Soul is about to pull out the station, and it's going to be a wonderful time, and we're going to make a lot of money. Tell you what, instead of giving you back your $1,000, How about I make you an executive producer of the pilot of Soul Train? To which my father, God is my witness, looked Don Cornelius dead in his eyes and said, motherfucker, don't nobody want to watch niggas dance for an hour. And that's why I'm broke to this day.
Turns out that's all America wants to do.
Yeah, it's just watch us dance.
Awesome. Give it up for Roy Wood Jr. That was amazing.